I trusted my neighbors. I shouldn't have. That's the whole thing, really. We moved here thinking people would respect the lines between houses, the property lines, the fence lines, the unspoken lines about how you treat the people living 6 feet away from your bedroom wall. We were wrong. My name is Marcus. I'm 36 years old. I work from home as a logistics coordinator for a shipping company based in Ohio. My wife, Diane, is 34. She took a promotion with a hospital group that relocated us from Indianapolis to Phoenix. This was 6 months ago. We bought a single-story stucco house in a development called Desert Crest, about 20 minutes from downtown. The neighborhood was new enough that the trees were still small, held up by wooden stakes. The streets were wide. The OO rules were 12 pages long. We picked the house because of the backyard. It faced west, so you got the sunsets over the White Tank Mountains. The previous owners had put in synthetic grass that looked decent. There was a covered patio with ceiling fans. After 15 years of apartment living, walking into that backyard felt like we had finally arrived somewhere solid. The house to the north shared a cinder block wall with us. That's where Dale lived. He was 45, divorced, worked construction based on the truck he drove. He moved in 3 years before us. The first time we met him, he was washing his truck in his driveway. Diane and I walked over with a 6-pack of beer to introduce ourselves. He took the beer, nodded, and told us the previous owners of our house had been quiet. Then he looked at our moving truck and said, "Just keep the music down after 9. I get up early." We said we would. We meant it. The first month was fine. We unpacked. I set up my office in the 3rd bedroom facing the street. Diane started her new job running the administrative side of a surgical center. We learned which days the trash ran. We learned that the mail came at 4 in the afternoon. We learned that Dale liked to grill on Wednesday nights and that he listened to conservative talk radio in his garage with the door open. Small things started in the 2nd month. I work from home, so I hear everything. At 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, I heard a metal scraping sound. I looked out my kitchen window. Dale was dragging his trash cans from the side of his house to the curb. But he wasn't taking them to his curb. He was taking them to the space between our driveways, right up against the shared property line. He left them there. I watched him go back inside. The cans stayed there. They weren't blocking my driveway exactly. They were just there, touching the invisible line that separated his territory from mine. I didn't say anything that first time. It seemed petty. They were trash cans. But they stayed there for 3 days after pickup. Then he moved them back, but not to the side of his house. He moved them against our shared fence on his side, but right where the fence met my property line. From my kitchen window, I could see them. 2 black cans and a blue recycling bin crowding the fence. Then came the bags, black garbage bags, the industrial kind you buy at Home Depot. He started placing them on the ground next to the cans. Not in the cans, next to them, against the fence. This was Arizona in June. The temperature was hitting 104 degrees by noon. I started closing the kitchen window when I made lunch. Diane noticed the smell first. She came home from work one Thursday and walked through the side gate to the backyard. She came back inside fast. "Marcus, what's that smell outside? Like something died." I walked out with her. We stood on our patio. The smell was coming from the fence line. It was thick, sweet, and rotten. Dale had added more bags. There must have been 8 or 9 bags piled there now, plus the cans. The fence is 6 feet high, cinder block, but there's a half-inch gap at the bottom. The smell was coming through. "He can't just leave garbage there," Diane said. "It's right against our fence." I told her I'd talk to him. I waited until Saturday morning. Dale was outside hosing off his driveway. I walked over. The sun was already hot. I could feel it through my shirt. "Hey, Dale," I said. He looked up. "Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the trash bags by the fence." He kept hosing. "What about them?" "Well, they're right up against the shared wall. We're getting smells in our yard, and I'm worried about pests." He turned off the hose. "I'm renovating my kitchen, ripping out cabinets. The bags are full of wood and drywall. It's construction debris. Okay, I said. But the fence is the property line. And with the heat, I'll move them when I get to the dump, he said. Next weekend, maybe. Could you move them to the other side of your house? Just away from the shared fence? He looked at me then. He had sunglasses on, so I couldn't see his eyes. The other side is where I park my trailer. I need the space. So you need to store your garbage on the property line. It's my property, he said. Right up to the fence. I'm not on your side. The smell doesn't stop at the fence, Dale. He picked up his hose again, like I said. I'll get to the dump. You just moved here. You don't know how things work yet. In Arizona, you mind your own business, and your neighbors mind theirs. He turned the water back on. Conversation over. I went back inside. Diane was at the kitchen table. I told her what he said. He said, mind your own business? Basically, his garbage is literally against our fence. That's our business. I nodded, but I didn't want to start a war in month 2 of living somewhere. I told her I'd wait until next weekend. Maybe he really would go to the dump. He didn't. The next week, he added more bags. There were 12 now. The smell got worse. I started seeing flies in our backyard. Big black ones that dive-bombed us when we tried to sit outside. I bought a fly trap and hung it on our side of the fence. It filled up in 2 days. I called the city. I spoke to someone in code enforcement. They told me that accumulated garbage could be a violation if it created a health hazard. They said they'd send someone out to look. They said it might take 2 weeks. 2 weeks passed. The pile got bigger. Dale added an old toilet, wrapped in plastic, leaning against the fence. Now it wasn't just smells, it was visual. From our master bedroom window, we looked directly out at a pile of garbage and a discarded toilet. I called code enforcement again. They said they had been out. They said Dale told them it was temporary construction debris, and he had a dump appointment scheduled. They said they couldn't prove otherwise. They told me to document it. So I started taking photos. Every morning, I walked out to the side yard with my phone and took a picture of the growing pile. I had a folder on my desktop called Fence Documentation. I dated every photo. June turned into July. The temperature hit 112. The garbage cooked against our shared wall. The smell permeated our garage, which shared the back wall with the fence line. When we pulled into the garage after work, we had to hold our breath. Diane stopped using the backyard. She said it made her nauseous. We paid $300,000 for this house, and we couldn't sit outside because of another man's trash. I tried talking to Dale again. It was a Wednesday night. He was grilling. I walked over. He had the radio on in his garage. Some voice was shouting about taxes. Dale, I said. The pile is bigger. The city called me back. They said, the city called you? He flipped a burger. You called the city on me. I called them for information. Bullshit. You called to report me. He pointed his tongs at me. You know what, Marcus? I was here first. You've been here 5 minutes. You don't get to tell me how to run my property. I'm not telling you how to run it. I'm telling you that your garbage is affecting my property, the smell, the flies. It's a health issue. It's construction, he said. I'm fixing up the house. You should be glad. Property values go up when people improve their homes. Not when they turn the backyard into a landfill. He slammed the grill lid down. You want to be the neighborhood cop? Fine, but remember I see everything that happens on this street. I know when you leave. I know when you get home. I know that wife of yours works late Tuesdays and Thursdays. You want to play games with me? I'll play back. He wasn't shouting, he said it calmly. That's how I knew he meant it. I went inside. Diane was watching from the kitchen window. What did he say? He threatened us. Should we call the police? And say what? He said he knows our schedule. That's not illegal. It's creepy, but it's not illegal. We sat at the kitchen table that night. The air conditioning hummed outside. Dale's radio kept playing. I could hear it through the wall. He kept it on until midnight that night. That's when the noise started. Before, Dale had been a normal neighbor. Loud sometimes, but normal. Now it was intentional. His radio started at 6 in the morning. Country music turned up loud, facing our shared wall. Then power tools. He started his table saw at 7 a.m. on Saturdays. He ran his air compressor at random times during the day. Loud bursts that lasted 20 minutes and stopped. Then started again just as I got on a conference call. I work from home. I need quiet. I bought noise-canceling headphones. They weren't enough. I could feel the vibrations through my office chair when he ran the compressor. I went to the HOA. I printed out the CCARS, the rules. I found the sections about noise during quiet hours, about trash accumulation, about maintaining property standards. I filled out a violation request form. I attached my photos of the garbage pile. I submitted it online. The HOA sent Dale a letter. I know because he came banging on my door that Friday night. I opened the door. He was holding the letter crumpled in his hand. "You think you're smart?" he said. "You think this will work?" "Dale, the garbage is still there. It's been 2 months. It's my property. We share a fence. That makes it my problem too." He stepped closer to the door. "You want to make this legal? Let's make it legal. That fence, it's 3 inches on my side. I had a survey done when I moved in. That means the fence is mine. And if it's mine, I can put whatever I want against it. And I can take it down if I want. Then what separates our yards? Nothing." He was lying. I knew he was lying. But the threat was clear. If I kept pushing, he'd claim the fence was his and remove it. Then our yards would be open to each other. Then he could pile garbage even closer. "You can't remove a structural fence without approval," I said. "Try me." He threw the HOA letter onto my porch and walked away. I picked up the letter. I smoothed it out. Then I got in my car and drove to Home Depot. I bought a $100 trail camera, the kind hunters use. I bought 2 of them, actually. I also bought a bag of Quikrete and some survey stakes. The next morning, while Dale was out, I installed the cameras. One faced the fence line from my garage roof, hidden behind a vent. The other I mounted on a stake in my backyard, disguised as a sprinkler control box. They had motion sensors and night vision. Then I called a survey company. I told them I needed a property line verification. They quoted me $800. I booked them for the following week. I spent that weekend researching. I read the Arizona revised statutes about property boundaries. I learned about spite fences and encroachments. I learned that if someone leaves garbage against your property and it causes damage or health issues, you can sue for nuisance. I didn't want to sue. I wanted him to stop. But I prepared. I created a spreadsheet. I logged every incident of noise. Dale started his compressor at 6:47 a.m. on Tuesday. I wrote it down. His radio played until 11:30 p.m. on Thursday. I wrote it down. The garbage pile now contains 17 bags, 3 appliances, and what looked like carpet rolls. I photographed it daily. The surveyors came on a Wednesday. They used GPS and old plat maps. They marked the corners with iron pins and orange flags. When they finished, the lead surveyor, a guy named Steve, walked the line with me. "This is your property," he said, pointing to a spot 6 inches away from the cinder block wall. "The fence is built entirely on Dale's property. It's a few inches over his line." "So he owns the fence?" I asked. "He owns the fence structure, but he doesn't own the air rights over your property, and he can't create a nuisance that crosses the line. Just because the fence is on his side doesn't mean he can force garbage smells onto your land. The law doesn't work like that." Steve gave me a certified copy of the survey. It showed the exact line. The fence was indeed 2 to 3 inches onto Dale's property, but the garbage was touching the fence, meaning it was within those 2 to 3 inches of Dale's land, but the smell and the flies didn't care about inches. Legally, I learned, this was called a private nuisance. I thanked Steve. I paid the $800. It was worth it. That night, I reviewed the trail camera footage. Dale had added a mattress to the pile. He dragged it out at 2 a.m., wearing just shorts and boots. He looked at my house while he did it. He gave the middle finger to my bedroom window. I saved the video. The next week, I sent Dale a certified letter. I used the survey to establish the facts. I stated that while the fence was on his property, the accumulation of garbage was creating a private nuisance under Arizona law. I cited the specific statute. I gave him 10 days to remove the garbage, or I would file a complaint in municipal court and seek an injunction. I also sent a copy to the HOA with the survey attached, showing that the garbage was within inches of the property line and constituted a violation of the Maintain Property Standards rule. 3 days later, Dale's radio got louder. He started parking his truck so it blocked half my view pulling out of the driveway. He didn't block me completely, just enough to make it annoying. Just enough to make me inch forward and back every morning. I added it to the spreadsheet. On day 8 of the 10-day notice, Dale came to my door again. This time he wasn't angry. He looked tired. He hadn't shaved. He smelled like beer. "You're really going to take me to court over some trash bags?" "Yes," I said. "Why? Why can't you just leave it alone?" "Because I can't use my backyard, Dale. Because my garage smells like a sewer. Because you threatened me and then made my work life miserable with the noise. I'm not asking for much. I'm asking you to clean up your property and stop harassing us." He rubbed his face. "I don't have money for the dump. The toilet costs $50 to dispose of. The mattress is another $40. I'm broke, man. The construction is because I'm trying to flip the house. I need to sell it. I'm underwater on the mortgage." I looked at him. "That's not my problem. I'll stop the radio," he said. "I'll move the truck. And the garbage? I can't afford to move it." "I'll give you $200, I said. "You use it to rent a truck from Home Depot for $19 an hour. You take everything to the transfer station. It'll cost you maybe $100 total. You keep the change." "But it has to be gone by Sunday," he stared at me. "You're going to pay me to clean up my own garbage. I'm going to pay to have peace. But there's a condition. You sign an agreement that you won't store garbage, construction materials, or debris within 10 feet of our shared property line for the next year. And you stop the noise violations. And you park your truck in your own driveway properly. And if I don't sign, then I file the lawsuit on Monday. And I call the health department again. And I submit all my documentation to the HOA to have you fined. They can foreclose on your house for unpaid fines. Dale, I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling you what the rules say." He stood there for a long time. The sun was setting behind him. It was orange and red. It would have been beautiful if the air didn't smell like rotting meat. "Fine," he said. "I'll take the deal." I had the agreement ready. I printed it that morning. We signed it on my porch. I gave him $200 in 20s. He counted it. Then he walked back to his house. On Saturday morning, I watched from my window. Dale rented a truck. It took him 4 trips. He moved every bag, every appliance, the toilet, the mattress. He swept the area by the fence. It was bare dirt again. The smell took 3 days to fully leave our garage. The flies disappeared. I took down the fly trap, but Dale didn't stop the noise completely. He turned down the radio, but he started revving his truck engine at 6 in the morning. Cold starts loud diesel engine. He let it idle for 20 minutes. It rattled my windows. He also started watching us. Every time I went outside, he came outside. If Diane went to get the mail, he walked to his mailbox. He never said anything. He just stood there, staring, until we went back inside. I checked the agreement we signed. It didn't cover staring. It didn't cover engine idling. I realized Dale wasn't going to stop. He was just going to find new ways to make us uncomfortable. He was the kind of person who couldn't stand losing control of the space. The garbage had been his way of marking territory. Now that I'd forced him to remove his markers, he was angry. Angry people do stupid things. I waited 2 weeks. I let him think he won. I let him think I was satisfied. I smiled at him when I saw him outside. I waved. He didn't wave back, but he stopped revving the truck quite as early. Then I started phase 2. I went back to the survey. The fence was on Dale's property, 3 inches in. But my property extended to the line. I owned the ground right up to those 3 inches. If Dale didn't own the fence, but owned the land under it, and I owned the land next to it. I called a contractor. I got a quote for a privacy fence. But I didn't want to replace the cinder block wall. I wanted to build inside my property line, 6 inches away from the shared wall. I checked the city codes. In Phoenix, you can build a fence up to 6 feet high without a permit if it's inside your property line. You have to call Blue Stake to mark utilities, but that's free. I hired a different contractor, one who could start immediately. I explained the situation. He understood. He built fences for a living. He'd dealt with neighbor disputes before we started on a Monday. I took a day off work. At 8 in the morning, the contractor began setting posts. They were 4x4 posts, pressure-treated, set in concrete. He placed them exactly 6 inches from the cinder block wall, entirely on my side of the property line, as established by the certified survey. I didn't tell Dale he was at work when we started. By noon, 3 posts were in. By 3 o'clock, the frame was up, 6 inches of clearance between the old wall and the new fence. Dale came home at 4:30. I heard his truck stop hard in the driveway. I heard his door slam. I walked outside. I was holding a water bottle, wearing work gloves. "What the hell is this?" Dale shouted. "It's a fence," I said. "You can't build a fence there, that's my wall." "No," I said. "The survey shows the wall is 3 inches on your side. My property starts 3 inches away from the wall. I'm building 6 inches away from the wall. This is all my land." He walked up to the new construction. He put his hand on one of the posts. "You're boxing me in. I'm fencing my property. You're creating a damned alleyway. You're going to fill it with garbage now." "No," I said. "I'm going to fill it with concrete." That was the plan. Once the fence was built, I was pouring a 3-inch concrete strip along the entire length of my property, right up against Dale's wall. A permanent, cleanable surface. No dirt. No place for bags to rest. Just a narrow concrete alley, 6 inches wide, separating our properties clearly and definitively. And because the new fence was 6 feet high in solid wood, Dale would lose his view into my yard. He wouldn't be able to see when we came or went. He wouldn't be able to stand at his fence and stare into our windows. He would be walled off completely, staring at stained wood planks 2 feet from his face every time he walked outside. "You can't do this," he said. "I already am. The city approved the placement. I have the permit." "Well, I don't need a permit, but I checked anyway. They said it's fine." He looked at the fence. He looked at the narrow gap between his wall and my new property line. "Where am I supposed to put my trash?" "Your side of your property," I said. "Away from my fence. I don't have room. Then get rid of it weekly like everyone else." He stepped toward me. The contractor, a big guy named Luis, stepped up from behind the fence panel he was holding. "You want to do something?" Luis asked Dale. "Because this is legal construction on private property. You touch anything, you're vandalizing." I got cameras rolling. He pointed to his truck, where a GoPro was mounted on the dashboard. Dale stepped back. He looked at me. "You planned this." "I documented everything you did for 3 months," I said. "I have photos of the garbage. I have videos of you dumping at 2 in the morning. I have noise logs. I have the threat you made about the fence being yours. And now I have a fence of my own, built exactly to code, exactly on my land, giving you 0 access to my sight lines and 0 excuses to pile trash near my home." "You think you're smart," Dale said. "No," I said. "I think you pushed someone who had time to read the rules. That's all." The fence went up over 2 days. Dale watched from his garage. He didn't offer to help. He didn't speak. When Luis packed up his tools on Tuesday afternoon, we had a solid 6-foot cedar privacy fence running the full length of our property line, 6 inches from Dale's cinder block wall. I spent the next weekend mixing and pouring concrete in that 6-inch gap. It was narrow work. I wore knee pads and gloves. I poured bag after bag of Quikrete, mixing it with a hoe and a wheelbarrow. I made a level surface, sloped slightly toward the street for drainage. When it dried, it was gray and clean. There was no soil for pests. There was no space for bags. There was just a sterile concrete alley, 2 feet wide, separating Dale's world from mine. I installed a gate at the front of my property line, locking it with a deadbolt. Dale could no longer access the side of my house. Before, there had been an implied easement, an understanding that neighbors might need to walk the line to check utilities or paint. Now, that access was gone. Legally, since the fence was on my property and the gate was on my property, he had no right to enter that space. If he jumped my fence, he was trespassing. If he touched my fence, he was vandalizing. The staring stopped. He couldn't see us anymore. The wood was too solid. The radio stopped. The sound didn't penetrate the new fence as much, and he knew he had lost the war of attrition. But the best part came 2 weeks later. Dale tried to sell his house. Remember, he told me he was underwater. He was trying to flip it. He had been renovating the kitchen, or so he claimed. But the garbage had been sitting there for months, not because he couldn't afford the dump, but because he was lazy and entitled. When the realtor came to list the property, they walked the exterior. I watched from my office window. The realtor was a woman in a blue blazer. She walked down the side of Dale's house, where the cinder block wall faced his own backyard. She stopped. She looked at the 6-inch gap. She saw the concrete strip. She saw the new fence, perfectly legal, perfectly placed. She saw that any future owner of Dale's house would have zero access to maintain that cinder block wall. They couldn't paint it. They couldn't repair it. They couldn't even see if it was cracking. And she saw that Dale had no backyard fence of his own on that side. Just the cinder block wall that faced my property. If that wall needed repair, the new owners would have to ask me for access. They would have to knock on my door and beg to enter my locked side yard to fix their own wall. Or they would have to build their own fence on their own property, leaving a 12-inch gap between the two fences, creating a permanent trash collecting corridor that they could never clean. The realtor took photos. She left. The next day, Dale pounded on my front door again. I opened it. He looked terrible. He hadn't slept. The realtor says the fence devalues my property by $20,000, he said. That's unfortunate, I said. You have to move it, or give me an easement, a maintenance agreement. No, I'll pay you $5,000. Just sign a paper saying the next owners can access that strip to fix the wall. You threatened my wife, I said. You made our lives hell for 3 months because you couldn't be bothered to take your garbage to the dump. You tried to bully us, and now you want me to help you make money on a house sale. It's just a signature, he said. It's just a fence, I said, built on my property. You told me to mind my own business. This is me minding my own business. He sold the house eventually. He had to drop the price by $15,000 to get a buyer willing to deal with the access issue. The new owners were a young couple, like us, from out of state. They seemed nice. They knocked on the door the day they moved in and introduced themselves. They asked about the fence. I had to build it, I said. The previous owner had some boundary issues. They nodded. They understood. They had seen the HOA disclosures about the previous disputes. We get along fine with them. They keep their side clean. They don't pile garbage. They don't play loud radios. They respect the line. Sometimes I see Dale's old truck driving through the neighborhood. He moved to an apartment across town. I see him at the stoplight sometimes. He doesn't look at me. My wife and I sit on our patio most evenings now. The smell is gone. The flies are gone. The concrete strip is easy to wash down with a hose. The cedar fence weathered to a nice silver gray. We planted bougainvillea along it. It's blooming red and purple. People ask me sometimes when they hear the story if I feel bad about costing Dale money, if I feel guilty about the revenge. I tell them no, I didn't cost him money. His own choices cost him money. I just stopped him from costing me my home. That's the thing about boundaries. They're invisible until someone crosses them. And once they're crossed, you have two choices. You can let people keep walking all over you, or you can build a fence. I built the fence, and I sleep fine at night.